The holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the United Earth Assembly, casting an ethereal blue glow across the faces of humanity's most powerful leaders. The alien figure that materialized was tall, elegant, and utterly dismissive. Lord Vex of the Galactic Council stood with the casual arrogance of a being who had never known defeat. "Humans," Vex's voice carried the tone of someone addressing particularly slow children. "Your species has been observed for 3 of your solar cycles. The Council has reached its verdict." President Kane leaned forward in his chair, his weathered hands gripping the armrests. Around him, the assembled leaders of Earth's nations waited in tense silence. They had known this day would come ever since the first alien probe had been detected in Earth's outer system. "Your world possesses resources the galaxy requires," Vex continued, his 6-fingered hands gesturing dismissively. "Your species, however, is deemed insufficient. You lack the physical prowess of the Korax warriors, the technological sophistication of the Nexus Empire, or the psychic abilities of the ethereal collective." The alien's reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. "You are soft, weak. Your greatest conflicts barely register on our military scales. Your strongest warriors would be considered children by galactic standards." General Torres, Earth's supreme military commander, stood slowly. Her voice carried the steel of someone who had seen real combat. "And what exactly are you proposing, Lord Vex?" "Surrender," Vex replied without hesitation. "Immediate and unconditional. Your world will be administered by the Council. Your people will be relocated to designated zones. Those with useful skills will be preserved. The rest—" He shrugged, a gesture that somehow conveyed the fate of billions. The chamber erupted in angry voices, but Vex raised a hand for silence. "You have 7 of your days to consider. The Council's fleet waits at the edge of your system's 600 vessels, each capable of reducing your cities to ash. Your primitive nuclear weapons, your chemical rockets, your crude energy weapons, they are toys compared to our technology. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring these front lines to you." President Kane stood, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We appreciate the Council offer, but humanity has a long history of surprising those who underestimate us." Vex's laugh was like breaking glass. "History? Your species has existed for mere moments in galactic time. Your greatest empires rise and fall in the blink of an eye. What could you possibly know of war that the Council has not seen 1,000 times before?" "Perhaps," Kane replied. "That's something you'll have to discover for yourself." The hologram flickered and died, leaving the chamber in darkness. In the silence that followed, General Torres spoke first. "Mr. President, they're right about one thing. Our conventional forces wouldn't last 10 minutes against technology like that." "Then we don't use conventional forces," Kane replied. "General, I want you to contact Professor Mills at the War College. Tell him to dust off every military manual, every tactical treatise, every warrior tradition humanity has ever produced. If they think we're weak because we lack their advantages, then we'll show them what we do have." Torres nodded grimly. "What are you thinking?" Kane looked out the window at the bustling city below, at the millions of humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their world hung in the balance. "I'm thinking about Thermopylae, General. About 300 warriors who held off an empire." "The Spartans?" "The Spartans," Kane confirmed. "They faced impossible odds too. But they had something their enemies didn't understand, something that transcended superior numbers and technology." "What's that, sir?" Kane's eyes hardened. "The willingness to die for something greater than themselves. And the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from winning, but from teaching your enemy that victory over humans comes at a price they never imagined paying." Professor Mills had spent 40 years studying military history, but he had never imagined applying ancient warfare principles to intergalactic conflict. The underground bunker beneath the War College buzzed with activity as teams of historians, tacticians, and military scientists worked around the clock. "The Spartan protocol isn't just about copying ancient techniques," Mills explained to the assembled Joint Chiefs. It's about understanding what made those warriors so effective against superior forces. On the massive display screen, images of ancient Greek warriors stood beside technical readouts of alien technology. The contrast was stark: bronze spears versus energy weapons, leather armor versus force fields, human flesh versus cybernetic enhancement. The Spartans weren't the strongest warriors of their time, Mills continued. The Persians had superior numbers, better equipment, and more resources. But the Spartans had something else: absolute dedication to their cause, and an understanding that warfare isn't just about technology. General Torres studied the tactical projections. What are you proposing, Professor? We transform our soldiers into something the galaxy has never seen. Not just warriors, but living weapons forged by human willpower and tactical innovation. We take our greatest historical military traditions and adapt them for space combat. The presentation shifted to show training protocols that would have horrified civilian observers. Soldiers pushed beyond normal human endurance, their bodies enhanced not by alien technology, but by the same brutal conditioning that had created history's greatest warriors. The psychological component is crucial, Mills explained. Ancient Spartan warriors were raised from childhood to view death in battle as the highest honor. They weren't just fighting for victory, they were fighting for immortality in legend. Colonel Reed, commander of Earth Special Forces, leaned forward. You're talking about creating a suicide cult. I'm talking about creating soldiers who understand that sometimes the greatest victory comes through sacrifice that inspires others, Mills corrected. The Spartans at Thermopylae lost the battle, but they won the war. Their sacrifice unified Greece and ultimately led to the defeat of the Persian Empire. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just planning to fight the Galactic Council, they were planning to lose in such a spectacular fashion that it would inspire humanity to ultimate victory. The selection process will be voluntary, Mills continued. We need soldiers who understand they may not survive the war, but whose actions will ensure humanity's freedom. Every major military tradition will be represented: Spartan discipline, Roman tactics, Viking ferocity, samurai honor, and modern special forces training. Torres studied the faces around the table. How many? Initially, 1,000 volunteers. They'll undergo 6 months of intensive training, physical conditioning that pushes human limits, psychological preparation for ultimate sacrifice, and tactical education that combines ancient principles with modern warfare. 6 months? Reed shook his head. The aliens gave us 7 days. The aliens gave us 7 days to surrender, Mills replied. They didn't give us 7 days to prepare for war. We'll buy time by appearing to negotiate while we prepare our response. The presentation shifted to show proposed combat scenarios. Small units of human warriors engaging vastly superior alien forces, using tactics that emphasize mobility, surprise, and psychological warfare. The key is making them underestimate us even more, Mills explained. They think we're weak because we lack their physical and technological advantages. They don't understand that human strength comes from our ability to adapt, to sacrifice, and to fight for causes greater than ourselves. Torres nodded slowly. And if this fails? Then we go down fighting, and hopefully our sacrifice inspires others to find a better way. Mills looked at each officer in turn. But I don't think it will fail. The galaxy has grown complacent. They've forgotten that sometimes the greatest power comes not from superior technology, but from the willingness to pay any price for freedom. The decision was made that night. Within hours, recruitment centers across Earth began accepting volunteers for the Spartan protocol. The response was overwhelming: millions of humans willing to undergo the transformation, knowing they might not survive the war, but understanding that their sacrifice could ensure humanity's future. The galaxy had called humans weak. They were about to learn the true meaning of human strength. The transport ship Defiance drifted silently through the asteroid field, its hull scarred by impacts from space debris. To the sensors of the Galactic Council fleet, it appeared to be nothing more than a damaged human vessel attempting to flee. The solar system inside the ship's cramped quarters, 50 warriors of the Spartan protocol made their final preparations. They wore armor that looked primitive by galactic standards, reinforced ceramics and carbon fiber instead of energy shields, projectile weapons instead of plasma cannons. But every piece of equipment had been chosen for a purpose that the Council would never understand. Squad Leader Blake ran through the mission parameters one final time. Remember, we're not here to win. We're here to teach them that fighting humans means paying a price they never expected. The warriors around him were no longer quite human. 6 months of brutal conditioning had transformed them into something else, beings who had voluntarily stripped away fear, doubt, and the instinct for self-preservation. They moved with the fluid grace of predators, their eyes holding the calm certainty of those who had already accepted death. "Contact," whispered Torres, the squad's sensor specialist. 3 Council patrol ships moving to intercept. The alien vessels were sleek and beautiful, their hulls gleaming with the advanced alloys of a civilization that had mastered space travel for millennia. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city, and their crews were elite warriors from species that had conquered countless worlds. "They're hailing us," Torres reported. Blake nodded. "Put them through." The alien commander's image appeared on the screen, a Corax warrior whose cybernetic enhancements gleamed against his natural scales. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Council space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." "This is Captain Reed of the Earth vessel Defiance," Blake replied, using the cover identity they had prepared. "We're experiencing engine failure, requesting assistance." The Corax commander's laugh was like grinding metal. "Assistance? You were given 7 days to surrender. That time has passed. Your species chose extinction." "Wait," Blake said, injecting just the right amount of fear into his voice. "We're civilians. We were trying to evacuate when the engines failed. Please, we have families aboard." The alien's expression shifted to one of cruel amusement. "Families? Even better. The Council will make an example of you. Prepare to be boarded." The 3 alien ships closed in, their weapons powered, but not targeting vital systems. They wanted prisoners, not wreckage. It was exactly what the humans had hoped for. The boarding tubes connected with hollow thuds, and the airlock seals engaged. Blake could hear the alien boarding parties preparing to enter their heavy footsteps, the whine of energy weapons charging, the guttural communication of beings who had boarded 1,000 ships and never faced real resistance. "Positions," Blake whispered. The Spartan warriors melted into the shadows, their movements so fluid they seemed to become part of the ship itself. Every corridor, every junction, every room had been prepared for this moment. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The first alien through the doorway was a Corax heavy trooper, his armor gleaming with energy shields that could deflect plasma fire. He stepped into what appeared to be an empty corridor, his sensors sweeping for human life signs. He never saw the blade that opened his throat. Blake moved like a shadow given form, his ceramic knife sliding between armor plates with surgical precision. The alien's death was silent, his body lowering to the floor without a sound as his own weight worked against him. The second alien through the airlock met Torres, who had positioned herself in the ventilation system above. Her descent was perfect, her weight driving her knife down through the gap in the alien's neck armor. The being collapsed, his weapon clattering to the floor. By the time the third alien realized something was wrong, 8 of his boarding party were dead. The corridor erupted in weapons fire as the remaining aliens tried to retreat, but the Spartan warriors had planned for this moment. Every angle of fire was covered, every retreat route blocked. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, the alien boarding parties were dead and the human ship was still intact. "Phase 2, Blake ordered. The Spartan warriors moved through the boarding tubes into the alien ships. The enemy crews, secure in their technological superiority, had never imagined that primitive humans could turn the tables so completely. What followed was not a battle but a demonstration. The aliens had superior weapons, better armor, and centuries of military experience. But they had never faced warriors who moved like ghosts, who struck from shadows, who treated death as a companion rather than an enemy. The first alien ship fell in 10 minutes. The second took 12. The third tried to flee, but the humans had already sabotaged its engines. When the silence settled, 3 Council patrol ships drifted dead in space, their crews eliminated by 50 humans with primitive weapons and an anka. Ancient understanding of warfare. Blake activated the emergency beacon. This is Squad Leader Blake of the Spartan Protocol. Mission accomplished. The galaxy wanted to know what human weakness looks like. Now they know what human strength can do. The message would reach Earth in 6 hours. But more importantly, it would reach the Council fleet in 3. The Council's response was swift and brutal. Within hours of receiving the distress signals from the destroyed patrol ships, a full battle fleet descended on the asteroid field where the Defiance had been destroyed. 200 vessels, each, carrying enough firepower to crack a planet, swept through the debris field like avenging angels. They found nothing but wreckage and corpses. Admiral Keth of the Korax Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical displays. With growing unease, the human ship had been vaporized by concentrated fire from a dozen heavy cruisers, but the bodies they had recovered told a disturbing story. The boarding parties were eliminated by primitive weapons, his tactical officer reported. Blades, projectile weapons, and what appears to be hand-to-hand combat. Keth's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on the data. Impossible. Council troops don't die to primitive weapons. The evidence suggests otherwise, Admiral. The humans somehow neutralize superior numbers in technology using ancient methods. Before Keth could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission. The image that appeared on the main screen was that of a human in primitive armor, standing in what appeared to be a rocky cave. "I am General Torres, commander of Earth's military forces," the human said calmly. "I believe you've met some of our people." Keth stepped forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. "Human, you've made a grave error. The destruction of Council vessels will not go unanswered." "We're counting on it," Torres replied. "In fact, we're hoping you'll send more ships. The warriors of the Spartan Protocol are eager to greet them." The transmission cut out, leaving Keth staring at empty space. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. The human's confidence was unsettling, especially given the fate of the patrol ships. "Sir," his sensor operator called out, "we're detecting multiple human signatures throughout the asteroid field. They appear to be everywhere." Keth's tactical display lit up with red dots, hundreds of them, scattered throughout the rocky maze of the asteroid field. Each dot represented a human signature, but their positions made no tactical sense. They were spread too thin, too exposed, too vulnerable. "It's a trap," Keth realized. "They're trying to draw us into the asteroids where our larger ships will be at a disadvantage." "Orders, sir?" Keth considered his options. The smart move would be to bombard the entire field from a distance, vaporizing the asteroids and any humans hiding within them. But the Council wanted prisoners, wanted to understand how primitive humans had eliminated an entire patrol squadron. "We go in," he decided. "But we go in smart. Deploy the hunter-killer squadrons. Small, fast ships that can navigate the asteroid field. We'll flush them out." The next few hours became a nightmare that would haunt the Council fleet for generations. The human warriors didn't fight like any enemy the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't hold territory or protect supply lines. They didn't retreat when outnumbered or surrender when cornered. They simply killed. The first hunter-killer squadron entered the asteroid field and promptly vanished. Their last transmission was a garbled scream that cut off abruptly. The second squadron lasted longer, reporting contact with human forces before their signals went dark. "They're using the asteroids as weapons," the tactical officer reported. "Somehow they're destabilizing the rocky bodies and using them as kinetic projectiles." Keth watched in growing horror as his tactical display showed the systematic destruction of his squadrons. The humans weren't just hiding in the asteroids, they were turning the entire field into a weapon. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface of asteroid designation 77 Alpha. The image that appeared showed a human warrior standing atop a pile of alien corpses. His armor was scorched and damaged, his face streaked with blood, but his eyes held in terrible calm. "This is Squad Leader Blake," the human said. "We've eliminated your hunter-killer squadrons. Their ships are intact and will make excellent prizes for Earth's fleet." Keth's roar of rage echoed across the bridge. "Impossible. Those were elite troops with superior weapons and armor. Blake's smile was cold. Your troops were good. But they made one fatal mistake. They thought superior technology guaranteed victory. They never learned that sometimes the most primitive weapon is the most effective. The human reached down and picked up a simple ceramic blade, its edge still wet with alien blood. This knife was made by human hands, using techniques perfected over thousands of years. It doesn't require power cells or maintenance. It doesn't malfunction or overheat, and it cuts through your armor just fine. The transmission ended, leaving Keth staring at his decimated fleet. Of the 200 ships that had entered the system, fewer than half remained combat effective. The rest had been destroyed, captured, or abandoned by crews too terrified to continue fighting. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a message from the Council. They're recalling the fleet." Keth turned to stare at the officer. "Recalling us?" "Yes, sir. Apparently, similar attacks have been reported throughout Council space. Human warriors are striking at patrol ships, supply convoys, and even major installations. The Council is concerned." For the first time in his military career, Admiral Keth felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not of death, which he had faced countless times, but of the implications of what was happening. The humans weren't just fighting. They were winning. The Great Assembly of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 1,000 worlds filled the vast chamber, their voices raised in panic, anger, and disbelief. The holographic displays showed a galaxy in turmoil. Council fleets retreating, human forces advancing, and the impossible reports that kept flooding in from every corner of civilized space. Lord Vex stood at the center of the chamber, his elegant features twisted with rage and confusion. "This is impossible," he declared, his voice carrying across the assembly. "Humans are primitive. They lack our technology, our numbers, our experience." "Tell that to the survivors of the Korak's 7th Fleet," growled General Thak, his massive form bristling with cybernetic weapons. "Tell that to the garrison at Nexus Prime. Tell that to the mining colonies that have gone dark across 3 sectors." The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate retaliation, others called for negotiation, and a few, the wisest among them, suggested the unthinkable, that perhaps the Council had underestimated humanity. "Order!" Vex commanded, his voice amplified by the chambers. "Acoustics. We will not be cowed by a primitive species that has barely learned to leave its own system." But even as he spoke, the main display shifted to show the latest intelligence reports. Human forces, small, mobile, and devastatingly effective, had struck at targets throughout Council space. They didn't conquer territory or hold positions. They simply appeared, destroyed everything they could, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. "They fight like demons," reported Admiral Keth, his proud bearing diminished by the humiliation of his recent defeats. "They show no fear, no mercy, and no regard for their own survival. They turn every battle into a massacre, sometimes their own, but always ours as well." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council's military superiority was based on the assumption that all rational beings valued their own lives above their causes. But the humans had proven that assumption wrong. "Perhaps," suggested Ambassador Lyra of the Ethereal Collective, "we should reconsider our approach. These humans have demonstrated capabilities we did not anticipate." "Capabilities?" Vex's laugh was bitter. "They have demonstrated nothing but savagery. They are animals fighting with claws and teeth against civilized weapons." "Animals," agreed a new voice, "that have killed more Council troops in 6 months than we lost in the last century of expansion." The chamber turned to see a human figure materializing in the center of the room, not a hologram, but an actual human, standing calmly in the heart of the galaxy's most secure facility. The being wore simple armor and carried weapons that looked primitive by galactic standards, but there was something about their presence that made even the most battle-hardened warriors step back. "I am General Torres," the human said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I believe you've been looking for me." The chamber erupted in panic as security forces rushed toward the human, only to find their weapons refusing to function. The human stood unmoved as dozens of the galaxy's most advanced weapons failed to fire. Don't bother, Torres said calmly. We've been studying your technology for months. Everything you have, we can counter. Everything you think makes you superior, we can defeat. Vex stepped forward, his body trembling with rage. Impossible. You're just one human. Am I? Torres asked. The chamber's display suddenly showed images from across the galaxy. Human forces emerging from hidden bases, from captured ships, from the very shadows of council space. Thousands of warriors, all bearing the mark of the Spartan protocol, all moving with the same deadly purpose. You called us weak, Torres continued, her voice growing stronger. You said we lacked your physical prowess, your technology, your experience. You were right. We are weaker than you, individually. But you missed the one thing that matters most. And what is that? Vex demanded. Torres smiled, and for the first time in galactic history, the representatives of 1,000 worlds felt fear in the presence of a single human. We're willing to pay any price for freedom, any price at all. The display shifted again, showing human forces striking at the heart of council space. Not random attacks, but coordinated strikes at the centers of power, the military bases, the shipyards that kept the council's empire functioning. You have a choice, Torres announced. You can continue this war, and we will continue to bleed your empire until it collapses. Or you can accept that humanity has earned its place among the stars. The chamber fell silent. The greatest military alliance in galactic history stood paralyzed by the actions of a species they had dismissed as primitive. What are your terms? Vex asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Simple, Torres replied. Humanity takes its rightful place on the council. Not as subjects, but as equals. The galaxy learns that strength comes not from superior technology, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything for a cause greater than yourself. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the council had been defeated. Not by superior numbers or technology, but by something far more powerful, the human spirit. As Torres took her place on the council throne, the galaxy learned a lesson that would echo through the ages. Never underestimate a species that values freedom more than life itself. The Spartans had taken their throne, and the galaxy would never be the same.